I am Joseph Hall, the program director here at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater, and I am here with Vanessa German, who will be performing her one-woman show, Roots, this weekend, April 1st and 2nd at 8 o'clock. Vanessa, first I'd like you to help me introduce yourself to folks who may not know you or may be unfamiliar with some of the work that you've done.
Okay, well, I'm Vanessa, and I have lived in Pittsburgh since 2000. I grew up in Los Angeles, and I grew up a performer and an artist. My mother is a visual artist. My mother is actually costumed on Broadway, and now she makes fiber art. So I grew up in Los Angeles, always going to interesting schools and interesting like summer programming and weekend programming. I went to Los Angeles Conservatory of the Performing Arts. I went to a school called Los Angeles Center for Enriched Studies, so I went to school with like every hot kid commercial actor. I went to school with the girl who played Annie on Broadway and Leonardo DiCaprio and Richard Pryor's kids and the Arquettes. Like I went to that place. I went to the public version of that place, which is still a great school. So I grew up performing, and I got to a place where I did not want to perform other people's words. Like it was cool doing Grease and Gilbert and Sullivan plays, but I always felt like I had something that I wanted to say. I always felt like there was something inside of me, and even though there were several people who would discredit that, who would always really say, "Oh, you're actually not special. God actually doesn't love you. You actually don't have a story to tell. Everybody has a story," just like that kind of thing. But I always felt like I had. That there was just something, like a fist of something inside of me, a nugget of something that was just more than the words in other people's plays. Like I had my own things to express.
So then when did you start writing, and specifically writing to perform?
I started writing to perform when I was about 18 years old. I wrote before then to write, to read off of paper for school, but also for myself. Like I have 3 sisters and 1 brother, and we would always share stories with each other. Like at night, and we would all congregate in one person's room, and my sister would read the next chapter of the story she had been writing. So we grew up reading and writing, but I started to write for myself to perform when I was about 18.
Wow. And so where does Root fall in all of your work? I mean, you're a visual artist. You started writing when you were 18. Where are you with Root?
Well, Root is, first I will say that I've directed and written other evening-length spoken word pieces. And they've all been really an experiment for me to kind of get into it, to see how to stretch spoken word into something that's evening-length that still has the character of spoken word poetry, which are, shorter kind of segmented poems, can move into something like monologue, but to really give that an arc, to really make it work. And then I've had like varying degrees of success with that, but it's every experience I've had is a tread on the staircase. It's taking me to the next place. So one of the things that I would do, that I'm sure some artists do, is like I would always think that I had to be like somebody else. Like, my friend Bamuti, he did this show, so I have to do a show that's like this, or like Def Poetry Jam is really famous, I gotta do something like this. And so I was always kind of outside of myself with it and saying, that's successful, so let me try to imitate that, as opposed to having my own source of inspiration, being inspired and active in that way. So Root is the breath that I have taken to say, well, you know what? I'm really inspired by spells and incantations, and also the power within work. Like I'm a self-taught artist, and I believe certain things for myself, about the work that I create visually, and about words, about the power of words and the power of sound. So I said, let me really invest myself into that. For example, a lot of times the beginning of my poems will be a series of words that has a certain sound, and the sound has meaning. The words have less meaning than the sound, but there's information just inside of the sound. And so I wanted to invest in that sense, that I could put something else inside of the sound and still have the poetry. And so Root is, and so there were certain things that inspired me about Root: the spell and the sound, the power of sound, and really investing in that. Wanting and loving things that are dramatic. Like, people are like, no more drama, but I'm like, okay, I like a little bit of drama. Like, I like thunderstorms, and I love when Mary J. Blige goes off at the end of the song. Like, I think drama is worthwhile. Like, I feel like God is pretty dramatic, like Kilimanjaro, the Nile, the ocean, you know, so I'm like, oh, need a little bit of drama. And so I think I love opera, how opera is just crazy over the top, and you know, the men come on stage and they with the whole train and just the drama of opera. And I do that sometimes in the spoken word pieces that I create. So I've created a spoken word
And I think
opera.
it's incredible because as one person, I think you bring that to the stage. We see that drama. We see that opera. I think we see that opera.
Oh, she brought the ocean.
So then what would you want the audience to take away from your show?
Well, I've been thinking about that a lot because this is the third time I've done Root. We did Root at the August Wilson Center as part of First Voice Festival, as part of the Fellows program. Did it once. Teched the show for 4 hours before it went up with all the different components. Did it at Martha's Vineyard, had several days to prepare there and do that. And so I've really been still coming into part of what Root is about, because it's alive. It's not in a box. It's not, you know, it's not in a box. It's still alive. And so one of the things, or let me first say that I'm hesitant to tell anybody what they're going to take away from anything with. You know, unless you go to a car dealership and you want a gray Lexus, you could go away with that.
Sure.
You walk away with that. But it's alive. And if there's any part of Root that can touch a place inside of someone else that would inspire them to be would inspire them into more of themselves, you know, then that's great. But I also want people to have fun, and I think that it's really important in the time that we are now as human beings for people to just feel. So I think it's cool. Come to the theater. Feel, laugh, cry, shout, feel, be here, and carry that experience in your chest of human experiences.
I think that's right on, and it reminds me of your last performance here, which was part of Sunstar and Carolina Chocolate Drops. Now, we had a lot of new audience members, probably a lot of new folks who weren't familiar with you before.
Right.
And I think that's
some
exactly
of them have written me on Facebook.
Really?
Yes.
And I think that's exactly what they got from you. You know, it was there, it was live, it was in the moment, and they really responded to that.
Yeah.
It was excellent. I
Thank
think
you.
it was one of your best performances here that I've seen.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm hoping they'll come back for the show this weekend.
I think some of them will. They've written me.
That's great.
Yeah, it is.
All right, well, if you're interested, and if you like what Vanessa's been saying, you can see her this weekend at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater. It, again, is Friday, April 1st, and Saturday, April 2nd. The evening performances are at 8 o'clock. We do have a pre-show mixer at 7 o'clock. During that time, Vanessa will be doing some interactive poetry with some guests, so show up for that. Visit us at www.kelly-strayhorn.org. Thanks.
Rock on.